Hello everyone and welcome to the Quilt Show. On today's show, our guest is an avid quilter, a TQS enthusiast, and she's here to show us patchwork perfection from start to finish. But that's not all, because in addition, quilt collector Bill Volckening is here, and he's going to show us some elegant antique quilts. You won't want to miss today's show. Stick around. It's a new day on the Quilt Show with your co-hosts, Alex Anderson and Ricky Timms.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Quilt Show. We're so glad that you're joining us, and we love the fact that the audience, my gosh, you're huge today. Yes. Wow, enthusiastic. One of the things, Alex, that I love is how that quilters, I mean, there's so many types of quilters, and from professional to rubber hits the roads, and then with the Quilt Show, we have viewers that watch and stick with us and do things. Today's guest has been a quilter in her own right, but she's also been probably one of TQS's biggest fans.
I say #1 cheerleader.
Absolutely.
One or two, because I'm not going to fight with the other person.
No, absolutely not. But you're going to enjoy the day. Please welcome Barbara Black.
Hey, Barbara. How are you?
Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm so thrilled to have you on this show.
Well, thank you.
A lot of people may not know, but like every year that I can remember, whenever I go to Houston to teach.
Oh yeah, this is
You are in the educational office greeting every professional teacher that comes in. You take care of us. You know, so we know you.
Right.
But there's a good chance that people out there might not know you. So we're going to we are going to get to know you today.
Well, good. Thank you.
So when did you start quilting?
20 years. Oh, I started quilting? 1985.
What happened 20 years ago?
Well, I started at Quilts Incorporated 20 years ago as faculty check-in.
Right. And I have to say, too, that you get there and you're kind of discombobulated and all that, and there's Barbara. She's our mom, all of our moms. But you are quite a quilter and very well known within your area. You're one of the head people.
mover shakers.
Yeah.
Keeping it all together.
Yeah. Well, I want to take a look at the very first quilt because then we can cement what this is all about.
All right. And this is a really significant quilt. So tell us about this.
That quilt is called Red and White by the Numbers. And the pattern, I happened to find out about the pattern before it started, which is always a good thing. The block of the month was going to be released throughout the year of 2012. And it was under the website justtakes2.com, the number 2. And that website is still available, and the patterns are still available.
Okay.
So every 2 weeks for that entire year, some of the blocks were available as patterns. And after a month, they went away. And if you missed them, you had to pay for them. So not wanting to miss them, I set alarms in my phone for the 15th and the 30th of each month. Well, so you have to understand, I worked for H&R Block at that time for 34 years, and January to April 15th is tax season.
Crazy.
So if I don't set an alarm, it's not going to happen. So I got the blocks, patterns each 2 weeks, started working on it as I had opportunity. And one of the things I decided to do, just because I could and it was easy, was keep a spreadsheet of how many fabrics, because I shopped in my closet to pick the fabrics, and how many pieces were in the quilt. Because it's easy to do while you're making it. It's ridiculous to go back later and try to count.
Right.
So there are 2,770 pieces and 59 different fabrics.
Yay.
And now you understand how Barbara thinks.
Yes, absolutely. But there's a bigger story connected with this.
There is. So 2012 is when the pattern came about. I made the quilt throughout that year, got it finished in early 2013. Basically, the pattern said for the border, when you got to the outside of the block, slap some red on there and call it done. No, I wasn't going to do that. That quilt deserved more. So I worked on that pieced border for a good week to get it to work. So 2013 was our guild show. We do a show every other year. That was our show year, so I entered it in the show, and it won Best of Show. In early 14, there was a call for entries from Houston for red and white quilts to celebrate the Ruby Jubilee, which is the 40th anniversary. A gemstone is ruby is red, and that was going to be in the fall of 2014. And I thought, I have one of those. So I submitted the pictures, as you do, to be considered for the special exhibit. And a month later, I got an email that we would like to use your quilt in the special exhibit and use it for part of the advertising. We need it here tomorrow. Now, this was in March, which is tax season.
Oh,
right.
I don't have any hours off to go to the FedEx with the quilt. And I said, and the next week the quilt had to be in Paducah because I had entered it in the AQS show and it had been accepted. My first time ever to enter, and it was going to Paducah. So I said, well, I can have it back to have it to you in about a month. No, you don't understand. We need it tomorrow. And we'll send it to Paducah for you. Okay. So I bundled it up and cleared the decks, canceled a couple appointments, and went on to a lunch break and took the quilt off to FedEx. And a month later, my boss at the time, Judy Mara, sent me a congratulations that the quilt had been selected as the commemorative
So
quilt.
let's talk
Here
about
we go,
this. Here we
everybody.
go. How does that feel?
Is that awesome
Right?
or what?
How does that feel?
And you know what, because we want to move on to the other quilts,
Yeah.
but I love the fact that, was it a friend or your husband or somebody that said, we've always known that you're a great quilter?
A good friend of mine said, who's not a quilter, said, you've been a great quilter for 20 years, now the world knows it.
Yeah.
And that felt very nice.
Yeah.
I did have
great.
it professionally quilted by a spectacular quilter, Pam Dransfeld. I want to give her credit.
Great.
Because that's what made the quilt as
Great.
special. I made a great top. She sent it over the moon with
That's
fantastic
great.
custom quilting.
Now we have to get to the other
Yes.
quilts. This is our block of the month.
Sort of.
Okay.
That quilt is the pattern called Washington Medallion by Sue Garman. And I met Sue in 2008 at the TQS booth at Festival when the 2009 quilt, our first block of the month that Sue had designed, Stars for New Day, was there. And I made every opportunity, twice a day I'd go by, took pictures. I was over the moon with that quilt. I talked to Sue and I said, gosh, I need to make this quilt for 2009. I have a quilt show at our guild show, but the patterns won't be available through the year. She said, I happen to be working on another pattern and I'll send them to you.
Nice.
Which was wonderful.
And you were
So,
very good friends with Sue, and sadly
absolutely.
she has passed.
Yes.
We miss her. Okay, the next one now, is that an original design?
It is.
Wow, nice.
That quilt is called Around with My Friends. I have two really good quilt buddies, as most of us have a couple of really
Right.
good quilt buddies. And we often do swaps with each other, or round robins, as this one was. And generally the rules are no rules, and you do what you want. There's no time frame. So I bought fabric for the three of us on a trip to Alaska in 2004. And I started making that quilt. I made the feathered star. Ellen, my friend, added the poppies, the applique poppies. And Sharon, my other friend, put that fantastic pieced border on it with the sawtooth edges around it. When I got it back, I just knew it deserved to be bigger. It was just so wonderful. So the applique pattern is an adaptation of a Nancy Pearson pattern.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I learned to needle turn from Nancy Pearson. I had the opportunity to have Nancy look at my drawings as I was making the adaptations and the changes, and she approved them. She was happy with what I did.
Nice.
So then I got it, the applique took a couple years, and because it's tax season, and I have a life and a job and things too.
But you don't
so,
do that anymore.
Not now.
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
So I started this quilt in 2004, and I finished it in 2011. And I put it in the quilt show, our guild show, and apparently that was the right year because it won Best of Show that year.
It happens.
And then it went on to be selected, as did Joyful Journey, as one of the 500 top traditional quilts in the
Nice.
book that was
Nice.
500 traditional quilts. So.
Okay, and then last but not least,
That one's called Stars in a Time Warp, and that's another block of the month. That one was from, it's a block of the week, from Barbara Brackman, her Civil War Quilts blog. And that was a great one for people like me who love reproduction fabrics. Every week for a year, she talked about a specific style of fabric. Sometimes it was the color, so you might have cheddar or poison green or double pinks.
Oh, I love that.
And then also the type of fabric, toiles, paisleys, plaids, things like that. So it was a wonderful way to learn every week about the history of fabric.
well, it's obvious you know what you're doing. And I just want to say real quick before we go to break, Barbara, with Sue's passing, has taken over the mothership of our block of the month. And we so appreciate you. So you can hang out with Barbara on our website. Also, you've got a great blog and all that good stuff, but we need to get busy.
We do need to get busy. And coming up, Barbara, oh my gosh, the perfection that you have in the piecing, well, that's what we're going to do. Perfect patchwork piecing is coming up with Barbara right after the break.
bringing in beginners, but you also love, you know, people who are doing other things too.
sure.
You travel and teach and all that good stuff. Okay, but with beginners, you know that it's about the details.
Exactly.
And what are the 3 most important things?
Cutting, sewing, pressing.
Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to be making. It's this little block, and what is it called?
Swamp Angel.
All right.
It's a variation of an Ohio Star.
Tell me about the basic components of Swamp Angel.
Sure. It has a square in the center. It has half square triangles for the corners and quarter square triangles for the star points.
And then basically it's made of 9 squares that are then sewn together.
In order to make the block.
Yeah. Let's talk about, I don't want to bog you down with math because we're going to have this on the website, but for each of these components, there are different cutting numbers that get it exactly right, but maybe not really, right? Okay, so let's talk about if you have a square, what would you do?
Square's easy. You add a 1/2 inch to the finished size. This is a 6-inch block, therefore that's a 2-inch finished center. We cut a square 2 1/2.
Okay, now the half square triangles.
The magic number is to add 7/8 of an inch, but I always go up bigger. It's a lot easier. We can custom cut it down to be the right size.
Okay, so figure 7/8 plus an eighth or a half, or no, maybe a quarter.
In this case, I would go right to 3 1/2 because we already need that for another strip.
And I think it's important to point out that in quilt making, it's all done in 1/8 inch increments. So that's where this is coming from. And then the magic number for a quarter square triangle is
to add 1 1/4 inches to the finished size. That would be 3 1/4. We're not going to do 3 1/4. We're going to do 3 1/2.
Go bigger, yeah. So you're all about squaring up.
You bet.
Okay, but let's start with cutting because, I mean, this is so basic and doggone it, I still get it wrong sometimes.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to clean up the edge. I'm right-handed, so I want my fabrics running to my right. And the first thing I'm going to use is a small square ruler. Any size would help.
Okay, so if I was a left-hander, it runs to the left.
Exactly right. Fabrics to the left, you're cutting over there.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So I'm going to pick a ruler, a line on the ruler I can see. Any line at all is fine. I've made sure this was flat. This is the folded edge. The selvage is the woven part there up there.
You only do 2 layers?
I do 2 layers because I'd rather cut 2 layers correctly than 4 not so good.
Okay, great.
All right, so I've put the bottom line on there that'll help me be straight.
Okay, but let's take a look at this. I don't want to. So here you've got.
I've picked a line that I can see. That any line would work. And I'm now putting the long ruler up against it. That's going to give me a 90-degree angle cut here.
Why not the mat? Why don't you use the mat instead of this?
It's too hard. I want the fastest method that gives me the result I want.
Okay.
So the next trick is to cut in front of the fold. Everybody starts cutting where they think the fold is, and 9 times out of 10 you miss it.
Okay.
So we're going to cut up just as far as your hand is. I'm really putting pressure on the mat to hold the ruler in place. And then I go up the rest of the way. And I bet I didn't have that cut.
Oh, you got the blade out. Well, that happens.
The blade happened. Okay, let's try that.
Oh, no, you did. Did you do it? No, do it again. Okay. Because we want to make sure that you see it again.
We pick a line we can see. And now we're going to come across here, and with the blade exposed this time,
there you go.
We're going to come across all the
devil's
way
in the details.
all the way to the top. And that little guy stuck right there.
That's fine. All right.
Don't move the fabric if at all possible. Keep it straight because we just made it a nice 90-degree
angle.
Okay,
now let me slow down right now. Okay, these finished blocks are going to finish at 2 inches.
Finished means when they're sewn inside the quilt.
And we know that this one's going to be the biggest cut because you have to add 1 1/4 to it. So you pre-cut this strip to accommodate everything.
Exactly right.
Okay, so what would we cut this big?
3 1/2.
3 1/2.
It's bigger than 3 1/4. That's all it needs to be.
Okay. I don't do that, and actually that's brilliant because otherwise you keep having to go back and pull out your fabric and all that good stuff.
Well, you might not do it because if you get it perfectly, but I'm here to tell you, beginners who take 2 years to get halfway good don't, it's just a struggle to get it right, so let's make it easy.
Okay.
Now the strip is cut 3 1/2. I determine how many squares I need, and I cut those into my squares.
Just doing the same thing.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
I'm at that.
So let's take a look at this again. Cut a square at 2 1/2. You don't have to, I mean, there's no sewing. There's nothing there to goof it up. So
once it's cut, it's the right size.
So let's talk again about these half square triangles.
Half square triangles involve using a square of white and a square of green in this case. And when you put those two together and draw a diagonal line, sew a 1/4 inch on either side, you get 2 of these. The block needs 4. So 2 white squares, 2 green squares will give us those triangles.
Okay, and again, we've overcut it because this is 6 inches. inches.
Yep.
And this is finished 2, rather than cut it 2 7/8.
We cut it 3 1/2.
3 1/2.
We have plenty.
Yeah. Okay. So then what do we do?
I've taken 2 of these, assuming that this is another corner here, and these are very scrappy. I use lots of fabrics. There's no such thing as too much fabric in my life. So I have a blue that's going to be a corner and a white. Drawn a pencil line on either side, down the diagonal, and I sew a 1/4 inch on either side.
Right sides together.
Right sides together.
And even the most trained professional quilters do it wrong, okay? I'm just telling you.
Oh, yeah,
Right,
we've all done that.
Okay, so then you've sewn it together. Then what do we do?
Now we cut them apart on the diagonal, and we're ready to press these toward the darker fabric. In this case,
cut. Okay.
Right through there, and we press this toward the yellow.
Okay, now pressing, number 2.
Number 2. The pressing, it's number 3 after we sewed.
Well, that's true too.
Set the seam.
Okay, but let's back up on that. As far as the sewing, you don't have to get all crazy about the 1/4 inch seam allowance because we're squaring it down.
Not
and this
yet.
is huge.
That's right. To make the units. So I want people to be successful.
Okay.
And so if they make these and they don't have them the right size, they're so frustrated.
Okay.
So by making them large, we can trim to perfection.
Okay, so here you go.
All right. Going to set the seam first. We're going to that helps to take the tension if the stitches aren't quite perfect. Set the seam, and I'm pressing using the edge of the iron to press the seam open, nice and flat.
Okay.
The heat and the weight of the iron. It's none of this job.
Because?
Back and forth. Because that'll mess up this bias seam, get you all wrinkly, and then you have to press it again. So
I got
nice
enough wrinkles.
So now it's too big because we oversized it, but it's ready to be cut.
Okay, so show how you do that.
You bet. We want to trim it down to 2 1/2. So this doesn't have a midpoint center, but it does have a diagonal line. So the first cut is important because it's going to get us started correctly and help us to have a square. I'm laying the diagonal line on the ruler right there on the sewn seam.
So that's pretty important to have a ruler with that.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Every square tends to have a diagonal line.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to cut the first cut straight up. And then I'm going to come around and cut this way. You can't do one of these numbers.
Okay.
You'll move the ruler and have a mess and start.
Okay, what do you mean? Say that again?
I'm not going to come up here and just sort of keep going.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay. One cut, pick it up, second.
Okay.
Now I'm ready for the second cut, and it's the critical one because it's going to determine what size this is.
Okay. Again, we want it 2 1/2
2 1/2.
inch, and it will finish at 2.
Exactly, when it's sewn inside. So here, now I've got several things to look at. I want a 2 1/2 inch line here and a 2 1/2 inch line on the bottom. We've already cut that, so it should be right. And the diagonal line we want in the middle. Come straight up, straight over. I call this trimming to perfection. You don't have to sew to perfection if you can trim to perfection.
See, I love that. I absolutely love that.
Now you say, look how good I did.
Man, you are really good.
There you go.
Yeah.
Even a beginner can do that.
Yeah, and so that would go right there. And again, you work scraps. So,
absolutely, different colors.
Okay. So now comes this bad boy. It gets a little more complicated, but it's okay,
sure.
right?
It has 2 sets of sewing.
Yeah.
So that's all. We're going to start with 1 square of white. That'll generate the 4 triangles. 1 square of yellow will generate the 4 yellow triangles, and 2 squares of purple.
Okay.
We'll take the 2 purple ones, so they're the same, place them face up, give them each a partner that's
Beautiful.
different. White, yellow. Draw a pencil line down the corner, just like we did before, sew a 1/4 inch on either side and cut them apart.
Okay.
So here we have a set that we've cut apart. We have a purple yellow friend and a white purple friend. We press these toward the purple, the fabrics that are the same.
Okay.
Then we're going to put those together because now we have to do the second set of sewing. The first sewing got us started, but the second set will finish.
Okay.
So we'll draw a pencil line diagonally from corner to corner. I draw it on the lightest fabric so I can see it.
Do you pin it or anything?
I don't because I can feel it there. If it was larger, I might.
Okay.
Draw my pencil line down there, sew a 1/4 inch on either side, and cut it apart. And voila, you have 1 point here and another start point.
Can I cut that?
Please do.
Okay, and then you have to yet probably trim this thing up too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's still too big.
Okay, there we go. There you go.
Okay. Press toward the purple.
Oh, look, see, that happens to even trained professionals.
It does.
Okay, so press towards...
And this we want to press toward the darker the side, so that means going toward the yellow purple.
Okay. I'm going to set my seams.
There you yes.
I like the part with setting seams that if your machine is kind of funky and has funky stitches, that will help take care of it.
It does.
Okay, there you go. Now, I love this.
Okay. It's too big, but we want to trim it to perfection.
Okay.
All right. So we know we're going to trim it down to 2.5. It has a belly button. So the first thing I want to do is put half of 2.5, the mark on my ruler, that's 1 1/4. And to make that easy, because I'm going to make a bunch of these, I've put a paper reinforcement.
I love this.
At the line where 2 1/4 crosses the diagonal. So I put that little belly button spot right there. I check to make sure that I have a diagonal from diagonal to diagonal. And I've got it left-handed.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's right, okay. First cut's important, so we go straight up, hang on to it, and we go straight over.
And now the next point.
And the next point's the critical. That's right. I've rotated it 90 degrees, and now I'm looking at several things.
Okay.
2.5 by 2.5 at the bottom, belly button still in the middle, and then I'm
on the diagonal.
And on the diagonal, all across. And we've sewn this fairly quickly, so he's a little wonky, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
Comes straight up and straight over.
Okay.
And now this piece is 2.5. We've wasted this much fabric for this much perfection.
I love that. All right, now let's talk about sewing it together. Again, it's a 9-patch. That's a term in quilt making. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Perfect.
So what about sewing it together?
Okay, I lay it out first. It's very easy to get one of these turned around. So
yes.
lay it out correctly, turn your head for a second, come back and check. Make sure it's fine.
I can guarantee you you're going to do it wrong. I can guarantee you.
Oh, you must.
Yeah,
That's part of the deal. So the first thing, it happens to all of us. First thing I'm going to do is turn this row on top of this one on top of this one, and this one, and chain, chain, chain. I'm going to sew them right down.
Here's an example of chain piecing. It's like you don't have big, long threads in between it.
Right. These happen to be half square triangles that were pre-cut. And this little thing is just a nifty little gadget, and it has a little exposed blade that you can't cut yourself. It's the fastest method that gives me the result I want, which is cutting them apart.
Okay.
Okay, so here's what I recommend. Beginners struggle so much with the 1/4 inch seam. They just do. And I consider beginners all the way to intermediates. It takes a while to master that.
30 plus years.
There you go. So I've sewn this unit together, and I just stopped with these two. If you are having trouble with your 1/4 inch seam, that happens when I get a brand new machine with different feet.
Right.
I have to figure it all out. You want to measure this before you sew anything else. We need to make sure it's the right size, because if it is not the right size now,
it's not going to get better.
Miraculously become the right size when you do the next step. It gets worse. So all I have to know is what size are these finished. 2 plus 2 is 4 plus 1/2 inch. I use my ruler, check, and I've already checked it. It is 4.5.
And if it's not right, now's the time to go back and do it.
There you go.
Okay, what about pinning? You've got these 2 rows that need to be pinned together.
These 2 rows are ready to sew together. Because of the way I press this, these are going to nest in here just exactly the way we want them to. And by nesting, it means that this purple seam allowance is going that way, and the blue one on the bottom is going that way. Okay? And there are places, this is a lot of joints that you want to line up.
But I'm going to slow down on this because we want this to come in beautifully. We want these guys to come in beautifully. Here, let's see.
Yeah, well, just on a
Okay, now you're in trouble. I'll cover that one up.
But you would find the one.
Okay, so then how do you pin?
So I turn this strip on top of this one, and again, because of the way we've pressed them, you press toward the path of least resistance.
Right.
I'm going to have the middle row pressed into the middle and the outer rows pressed out. I put a pin in front of the intersection. It makes no sense to me to pin
it's
back
too late,
here.
man.
There you go. Once you've sewn past it, you've sewn past it. So I have a pin there. And I know Ricky's not a fan of pins, but...
No, he's trainable.
Oh, is he? Okay. All right. Well, we're perfectionists. We do it this way. Now, here's my most important pinning tip. I've never seen anybody else do this, but this helps, and it helps my students a lot. At the end, the biggest problem we have is at the end when you sew off, I put my last pin, instead of putting it here, put my last pin about 3/4 of an inch to an inch away, outside of where the foot is.
Okay, so you're coming down here, and so that's
I don't have to take this pin out.
Oh, yeah.
I can sew it straight. If I don't have a pin here, I have a pin up here. As soon as I take it away, it tends to veer. And
what about this one? Do you pin this? Or no?
Normally I don't, because I'm going from here to there.
Go sew it. So. There you go. Pressure's on. And that you have a 1/4 inch foot on it.
1/4 inch foot.
And for everybody watching, this is pressure right here, right now.
And of course, they got stuck a little bit. Come out of there. All right. Okay. I do not sew over pins. You can damage your machine.
Oh yeah, mine had to go back practically to Switzerland.
And this machine does not belong to me, so I'm definitely...
Yeah, right, please don't.
Okay. So I pull the pin out as I get there. Okay. But this last pin, you see,
It
can stay in
there.
place.
I love that tip.
But it helps to hold it, because typically what we do is we pick up the next thing and we're not paying any attention.
Okay, so let's see. Come on, let's get up here. Let's take a look, Barbara.
All right.
And this is when you go, oh, please
Yeah,
let me
let's
right.
hope it
So,
works. Yeah.
okay.
Ooh, good job.
Okay, people.
Good job.
And then just to quickly wrap this up, just using the math that we gave
Sure.
you can go small, you can go big.
That's a 9-inch square, so those are 3-inch units. That's a 3-inch square, those are 1-inch units.
And so that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I know you have a whole lot more to share. Now, your
do.
blog has tons of good stuff. What is
Absolutely.
that?
It's bbquiltmaker.blogspot.com or Joyful Journey.
Beautiful.
I have tutorials. I have my workshops are listed that I teach all around the country. I answer lots of questions from people who say,
She's a good teacher. Hey, now stick around because we've given you good beginnings. We want perfect endings. And Ricky, you will be working with Ricky for that.
On bindings, you bet.
Great. I think we got that
Welcome back, everyone. Now, if you're a beginner, binding could be something that's a little bit of a mystery, and there's a little few things that maybe you don't know about. But if you've been binding like I have for a long time, you're going to think you know it all. Well, I'm standing up here, and in the break, I'm about to learn stuff.
Okay.
So stay tuned for this. Let's
Great.
talk about the tips and tricks that you love to get the binding just right.
Perfect. Okay, a lot of people are afraid of binding, and it doesn't have to be hard. The first decision you have to make, are you going to make bias or straight of grain? Straight of grain will last 80 years, bias will last 100. Either way, it's not my problem.
I agree.
I'm going to make the one that's best for me, the fastest method, gives me the result I want, that's straight of grain.
Straight of grain.
The next thing you have to figure out is how much fabric do you need? How many strips do you need for your binding? You measure the perimeter of the quilt, whether it's small or king size.
So I'm going to say my perimeter is 120.
Okay. And you're going to add 12 inches to that. And the
132.
Yes, it is.
I could do that.
The 12 inches allows you to have fabric to turn the corners and to make those joins. Because on a big quilt, you might have 10 joins if you've got 11 strips.
Sure.
So that gives us the extra fabric. And I like to, then I divide that number by 40. So you picked a hard number, 132 divided by 40.
Okay, well, I don't know either, so don't ask me.
But so this little quilt right here is 72 inches plus 12 is 84. Divided by 40, that's 2.1 strips. I can't cut 0.1 of a strip, but because these fabrics were 43 inches, not 40, I'll have 2 strips is enough.
I see what you're saying, because the width of the fabric is what we're talking about, and you're using 40 as your starter.
Exactly.
But since this fabric is 42, 43, by the 2 of those strips, that's going to be enough.
If it was 2.5, 2.6, you just cut a whole 3rd strip.
Okay. We just got to make sure we have enough.
That's right. You don't want to get halfway done and run
can
out.
I say, if you don't have enough when you get there, at least have set your binding fabric in a place where you can find it.
Yeah. I've lost my binding fabric.
I have too. I have too.
Yeah. And then you choose something else.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this only required 2 strips, and I'm going to use the sew first method to join these strips. Most people find this to be the easiest. Okay. I'm going to take the bottom strip is laid down on the table this way, face up, running side to side. And then I'm going to take the remaining strip, place it face down on top of this one. And I haven't taken the time to cut the selvages off, but I don't want those in my binding. So I'm simply offsetting this enough that those 2 white selvages will not be included here.
Certainly.
I've got it as close to 90.
And the tail's coming towards you.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, this part's, that's right. The top one is coming top. Doesn't matter if you're left-handed or right-handed. This is the way you do it. Now I want to draw a pencil line from the upper left to the lower right.
Which you've already done.
I have.
Yep.
So I've laid a ruler here, drawn this, and I've got the pencil line in place. If you mistakenly draw the pencil line from the upper left to the lower right, you know what happens. The upper right to the lower.
All you're going to get is that.
You're going to have a V.
Yeah.
And that's not a binding I want on any quilt I'm going to make.
All right.
Okay. So I've got this one ready to go, and just double check, make sure you drew the line the right way so it lines up.
Perfect.
Going that way.
All right.
Okay. I'm going to sew this real quickly.
All right. And this is just basically sewing straight on the line.
Straight on the line.
Taking it in at the V where the fabrics are making a V.
Yep.
And you're going to remove that pin. I know you are.
I am. I do not sew over pins. If you have to sew over pins, put them sideways and gently sew over them. Gently.
And let me just show here, yeah, absolutely.
Don't hit them at a high speed.
Let's just don't sew over pins. You start at the V and you go off at the V.
Exactly right.
All right, and then you're gonna trim off the excess.
I've laid this out here, and I've simply put a 1/4 inch line on top of my stitching, so I know I'm cutting a 1/4 inch away. The thing I teach people all the time is the part you want to protect is under the ruler.
Okay.
If I laid it the other way, I'd have an opportunity to sew it again.
Which we don't want.
That's trash.
Okay.
Now we would press the seam open, and we would press the entire binding
in half, wrong sides together.
Wrong sides together,
Okay,
that's right,
the entire thing. I moved over here, but that's what's going to happen
That's
to
right.
create your binding.
Exactly
All
right.
So now, tips on getting your quilt ready for the binding,
That's
because
right.
it's not a matter of just putting the binding on yet.
Right. Most of us, we're going to have excess back and batting. That's just part of the process of quilting the quilt, whether you did it yourself or you quilted by checkbook and paid someone to do it.
Yep.
So I'm going to trim this last remaining corner off, and I use a small square. This is 6 1/2, works very well. But instead of just laying the edges up here and cutting it around and hoping that the border's straight, I'm going to measure from a specific place on the binding border. This border was cut 2 1/2 inches. I've used a 1/4 inch. So if I
So you're looking at the seam that's actually in the quilt.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
The 2 1/4 inch seam right there, and the 2 1/4 inch seam here. And I may have to do a little fiddling to move this over just right, but that will ensure that I have a straight border when I apply the binding.
Okay. And so you've done this already on all the 4 sides, and this is your
Except this
final
last
corner.
one, that's right.
And now that's going to be ready
Trash.
to, it's trash, but this is perfect 90 degrees.
Right, exactly.
And even if some of the batting is showing, that's still going to be incorporated into the whole.
Into the binding, that's right.
Fabulous.
The next thing I do with every single quilt I make, whether it's this small or king size, is I incorporate a hanging sleeve made from the same fabric as the back right into my quilt. Small ones are fine for small quilts. You can hang it up with a dowel, but on bed-size quilts that are going maybe into a quilt show, they have to, most of the rules say at least 4 inches deep pocket, so I would cut that 8 1/2 inches.
Okay, or even 9 just to give you a little,
give you a little extra.
And
by
you folded it in
incorporating
half?
it, I folded it in half, and that little piece here.
Well, this is okay. We can use that.
So I folded it in half, and when it was flat, I stitched these edges down. I just folded them in a little bit to have a nice smooth edge.
Right, and I'll just show that. You
Perfect.
folded them in.
That's right. And stitch them down. If you don't stitch it, the first time you put that rod through there, you catch yourself on the corner. So I've got it ready. I've moved it in where it's about 1 inch in from either side, and I machine based it with a long stitch. I just turned the stitch to 4 1/2 or so, and machine based the sleeve in place so I don't have to pin it.
And it's about 1/4 inch.
It is.
Or it could be a little less. It's just got to be on there.
That's
okay,
right.
cool. That's a cool idea.
And it's there already. The only part of hand sewing has to be done then at the end is this bottom.
That's great.
Okay. Now here's the next tip, and every time I don't do this, I'm sorry.
So we are doing it.
We are doing it.
Because we're not going to be sorry today.
That's right. So
this is good. So here we go.
Yeah. This is only 2 strips of fabric. This small quilt as well is about the same size as that one. So I only have 1 join, but in a bed-size quilt, you can have 10 or more joins.
Right, and let's talk about that join. Because it's on the bias, it's at the 45-degree angle, it actually covers, what, 2 or 3 inches or so?
It does.
Yeah, it takes a little while before you're out of that danger zone, so to speak.
That's right.
Well, what's the problem with that?
The problem with that is that this is a double fold. We've got to fold this corner over in one direction and flip it over again. If you have all that bulk of the seam inside there, when you try to make a nice mitered corner, it no can do.
So what I'm going to say is you guys know that many of you have experienced it. You want that seam to stay away from where you're dealing with your corner, right? So this is where this tip comes in.
And it takes in this case, it probably took me a minute or 2 to do, but on a bed-size quilt, it can take 10 minutes, but it's worth the time.
Worth the time.
So I start where I think I'm arbitrarily going to start, and here's the beginning tail. I'm just decide this is a place to start. And so I just come to each of my corners, and I pin in the same way that I'm going to sew them.
Right, so you do let's do it.
So
you bring the one down.
This way, let me go up.
Here, let's lay this down.
That's right.
Okay, lay it down. You fold this one over and then back onto itself. But I just wanted everybody to see it clearly.
That's right.
And then
I
you'll
stick
put
a pin there just to hold it.
Right.
Something small like this doesn't take long. Bed-size quilt I lay out on a spare bed so I can do it. Come all the way to this, do the same thing here, and then I work my way up here and discover that here is this seam on this one join, and I am outside of that, so I'm fine.
So yay, that's
good. If I was 1 inch further in, I'd have to back up.
It wouldn't work, and you'd have to back up and start over.
I'd rather back up while it's pinned.
I get it. All
when
right,
it's sewn.
good advice.
All right. So now we're going to show you how to do that flipped corner. These 3 corners have been sewn already.
Now, before we get there, just tell me what seam allowance size you're using to stitch this down.
Okay. I use a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I have cut these strips 2.5 inches. I have found with my machine and the walking foot that I like to use, that gives me the finished size binding I want.
Right. And there are other options.
Sure. A lot of people like it narrower. 2 1/4 is a common measure that people cut their binding and then they sew with a 1/4 inch seam.
Okay.
I prefer a little wider.
But in this case, you've just done your start, you've done your corner, like we've just talked about, all the little folded part, and we're about to do the last fold. So let's talk about this last fold.
All right, so as I get close, now this, assuming this is in the machine, as I get close to this, I'll stop 3 or 4 inches away and take the part that you need to turn the corner, and I stop and fold it while it's on the bed of the machine and finger press a crease, and that shows me exactly where to stop. I sew up to that point, not beyond, not a stitch too far, and go backwards. I back stitch.
Okay.
Then I take it out of the...
Some people, I've seen them come off the corner
that's
here,
right.
and that's fine.
I try everything once.
Sure.
So I've tried that on more than one occasion. That method doesn't work well for me.
Okay, so the back stitch, and I'm a back stitch guy too, so I just want to...
I'll back stitch.
Okay.
So now I can just pull it out. I don't usually cut the thread or take it too far away from the machine, but I pull it out of the machine, and I now turn it the direction I want to sew. I fold this one back up the way it should go. I now bring the fold down, and this is part of that 12 inches we talked about, this extra fabric. I've got the fold even with the top edge of the quilt, and I'm sure that it's a 90-degree angle. If I'm not sure, I use a ruler to check.
Sure.
Okay, now I'm ready to start sewing, and I can start sewing right off on that edge. I don't have to guess in here. I'm going to start on the outside edge.
And this is why you don't have to go off that corner, because you back stitched, and this is going to fix that.
Exactly right.
So let's do that.
Okay.
So we'll go to the machine.
And I'm going to sew about this far because I need to leave an ending tail.
Okay, all right. So while you're starting this and sewing it, tell us what foot you've got on and how you're knowing to do the 3/8 of an inch.
That's a great question. This is the 1D foot on this Bernina 770. It gives me a 3/8 of an inch wide, and it's a dual feed foot, so I didn't have to take time to put the walking foot on. It gives me exactly a 3/8 of an inch with the needle in center position.
Wow, that's cool.
It is. It's really cool. Just works just right. Oh, and the thread has come undone.
Oh, lovely.
Isn't that the way it happens?
Yep.
All right, no problem.
The good thing is I don't have to show you how to thread that.
No, sir.
I do love the needle threader.
You got it.
Boom, done.
Done. Hey, old eyes need those more than...
I'm telling you. I can remember my granny would call me and say, can you come over and help me thread a needle?
Exactly. Yeah, I tell people I'll help them with most of them.
And of course I would go over and help her thread a needle.
Of course you would. I tell most of my students I'll help them with a lot, but threading the needle's not it. All right. Okay, let's see if I can get this started again. Perfect. All right. We need a longer stitch.
So we'll just go to a 3.5 maybe?
Yeah, no, that's good.
There you go.
Okay. And a longer stitch is important because think of how many layers we're sewing through here. We are sewing through the 2 folded edges of binding, a batting, a backing, and on the corner where the edge where I have the sleeve, I've actually got 2 more layers. So that is 7 layers of fabric.
Wow, that's a lot.
So
okay, so now this is the big to-do.
Yeah, this is worth the price of admission right here.
So don't close your eyes. Stay tuned.
Here's the beginning tail. I lay this, remember we left a starting tail.
Yep.
So I've left this here, and I bring the ending tail over, and sometimes it's much longer, depending on how much longer you needed the sleeve. The binding strip, I'm going to fold this back so it's about 1/8 of an inch away, not a quarter.
So there's a slight gap.
Slight, and that'll help to make sure it really fits well. Then you're going to use a ruler, and all I have to do now is draw a line from the fold back to whatever width the original binding was cut. My case was 2.5. If you forget, open it and measure it.
Sure.
So I lay my 2.5 inch line on the fold, take a pencil I can see, draw a pencil line there, and now I'm ready to cut this excess off.
Okay.
The hardest part about the whole thing.
All right.
Hold your mouth just right.
I am.
All right. I want to line this up 90 degrees, make sure it's correct, and I'm ready to cut that off. Now it fits exactly. The only trick that I learned, someone said now, the person who told me how to do this read it in a magazine. She said, now you take the beginning and you open this up and you draw a pencil line from the upper left to the upper right. Well, I did that the first time, and then it dawned on me.
Upper left to lower right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Upper, did I not say that?
You said upper left to upper right, but you mean upper left to lower right.
Upper left to lower right.
Okay.
So it dawned on me, this is the beginning. If I draw the pencil line while it's still laying on the table, I don't have to do it when I'm fiddling around with the king size quilt. There you go. So you didn't know it, but that pencil line's been there the whole time.
That's great.
Take this end, and I'm going to lay this bottom one down the same way we did when we made the binding. Lay the bottom one down this way. Take the top one, again, in the exact same way. This time, because there is no selvage, they're lined up edge to edge.
And so, yeah, so this is now lined up edge to edge. Mm-hmm. You're going to sew on that line. Yes. And when that folds over, that all fits perfectly to finish it off. What do you think, everybody? Yeah. We don't need to sew it.
We don't.
That is a fabulous way to tip. And I did not know that little eighth of an inch thing.
Little gap.
Measure it the same width, and that's great.
Good.
Yay,
the only thing left to do then would be to hand sew it or machine sew it down. You choose.
Right. Now I'll get somebody to do that for me.
There you go.
Okay. Everybody, when we come back, thank you so much. When we come back, we've got Bill Volckening. He is a quilt collector, and you're going to see some quilts, some old, wonderful, historic quilts that are going to take your breath away. Don't go anywhere.
On the next quilt show, the majesty of mosaics. See the stunning work of Heidi Profetti.
Learn the secrets to her detailed precision cutting, as well as how she turns a photo into a workable quilt pattern.
When I touch this, that shows you how that whole design has been traced.
And really, that's what we need, because ultimately, that's what's going to cut out your pieces.
Correct.
Plus, Ricky shares his taming of the shears. Don't let peekaboo fabrics stump you.
Catch all the buzz on the next Quilt Show.
Are enjoying the works of what was probably done hundreds of years ago.
Oh, literally 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And the quilts, I get so excited about old quilts because they have stories to tell, and I want to remind all of you that the quilts you are making now will be old someday, and they will have a story to tell. Well, the person that's going to tell stories with quilts today is our special guest. Welcome to the Quilt Show, Bill Volckening.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Howdy.
So let's just dig right into how you got into this.
Well, I got into it when I bought my first quilt in 1989 to hang on the walls, just as wall decor. And one thing led to another. You know, you paint the walls, you get new furniture, you move to different places. And I amassed a collection of quilts over a 20-year period. Nobody knew I was collecting quilts, and I didn't define myself as a collector.
But the bug bit just because you wanted to use the decor, and then you repainted and like, oh, I need a new quilt now. So then suddenly you're starting to just, where are you snooping these things out at?
A lot of them came from eBay. I wasn't pounding the pavement like generations of collectors before. eBay was available at that point, and I was doing a lot of collecting online. So I'm sort of on the cusp of a generation of quilt collectors who are doing things differently.
What do you have, like a couple dozen?
I have about 500.
Oh, there. Now, what are we going to learn today?
Wait, because I'm not done. I'm not done learning. 500 quilts or so, ranging what ages? How far back?
From before the Revolutionary War, about 1760 to present day. And I have a large collection of 1970s quilts. I have a large collection of New York beauty motif quilts.
One of the largest New York beauty collections.
Yeah, there are about 70 in that collection, and my first book was based on that collection.
That's amazing. All right, now let's get into the quilts, because these are going to warm my heart like nothing else. Let's start with this one.
This poor little quilt.
This one's in rough condition. It's from the 1840 period, and it's a lovely little crib quilt that's in really poor condition, but I feel strongly that today's quilt makers can learn a lot from old quilts, and just because it's in this condition doesn't mean it has nothing to teach us. It has a lot to teach us. A friend of mine saw this quilt and was so captivated by it that she recreated it in a top.
Okay, let me take this way, okay? There we go.
And when you say, for example, what can that quilt teach us?
The quilt can teach us about design. It can teach us about a combination of applique elements and pieced elements, combining elements into an overall medallion. The way they did the border is very different. The way they did these circles with the buttonhole stitching, also very different. It combines a lot of elements, so it's almost like a sewing sampler in a way. I should mention that my friend Siobhan Ferguson did this top, and she lived in Georgia at the time. She's now Florida.
And see, and I just love right now that Barbara was teaching us how to do this. I mean, it's not like we're inventing anything new.
Right.
Yeah.
So now we're going to get into some really elegant old quilts.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about this one. Oh, well, let's hold it up so everybody can see too, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
This makes my heart just go crazy.
They just speak.
This one's also in kind of fair condition, but I love the design. I feel like the botanical elements we see in quilts are interesting combinations of elements and inventions by quilt makers from the past. This one seems to have almost like a poinsettia flower with a Christmas cactus and pokeberries, but I really need to talk to a botanist to get the whole deal.
When do you think this was made?
Around 1860, 1870.
Well, I'm impressed that the green is still in excellent condition, because that is not the case in many quilts, correct?
Correct. This green was created with an overdying process that involved a blue bath and a yellow bath, and invariably one of those dyes would be unstable or fade out, and it has faded out somewhat to what they call the poison green. It's really an overdyed green that's, the blue is faded out a little bit and it's gone more yellow.
And originally, this would maybe be a little more intense green, and was this pink a pink, or was it more red? Do we know?
It's actually a turkey red that's faded out to kind of a dark pink.
But it has a lovely color even now.
Yes, it does.
Wonderful.
This quilt, by the way, was featured in Quilting Arts magazine.
Thank you for reminding us, because you photograph your own quilts.
Yes, I do.
In the Quilting Arts magazine, the one that came out in September of 2018, there's an article that actually shows how you photograph these quilts, because they are a little more precious, I think, and a little more delicate than even a brand new quilt. So that's great information that people can learn.
And speaking of that, I'm feeling like really nervous about lifting this up and getting it off.
It's okay.
Okay. All right, we'll flip this down.
Okay, bring that on down.
All right. Wow, this is in great shape.
This one's in much better condition, and it's another unique design. Barbara Brackman actually did a blog on this design element and called it Pumpkin Patch. I'm not sure what the makers or maker would have called it at that time, but she's calling it Pumpkin Patch, and there are other examples of this out there. I call it the start the car quilt, because when I found it, it was such an incredible bargain that I was like, start the car, get me out of here.
Get me out of here.
And I will tell you too, I use this border now. This is something that I use all the time in my quilt making.
Well, and I'm just looking at, see, we're exploring these. You know them, and we're standing here looking at them. I'm looking at the double quilting.
It's a filthot too.
Yeah.
It's like a pinwheel element. So the quilting elements sort of riff off of the applique elements. And I should mention, this one is in my book. We'll talk about my book in a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's pull this up.
This
just makes my heart go crazy.
I
Where
love
do you
that
store
quilt.
all these quilts?
Well, the really good ones get stored in boxes that are very much like wedding dress boxes.
Okay,
They're
gotcha.
made out of cotton rag board, like the matte board that you use for archival picture framing. And so the really good ones go in there. Some of the other ones get stacked up. This is a doppelganger. This is the same design as the one we just looked at, but it's done in a different way with a slightly different border that has these little pokeberries again.
And again, when was this, do you think?
Around the same period, 1860, 1870.
And a little more heavily quilted.
Yes,
and
a lot
I'm
more
curious
heavily
to know
quilted.
about the batting that's in this, because it is really thin.
It's really thin and it's cotton, and actually there's a way, I don't know if we can get this on camera, but if you look through it from the back with the lights, you can see these dots on the inside. The dots come from the debris from the cotton. It was before manufactured cotton batting, so there was all kinds of debris in the cotton, and after about 1860 or 1870, you don't see that kind of debris.
Oh, that's
but
interesting.
You can hold an old quilt up to the light and look through it and see black dots on the inside.
Okay.
That'll date it to a certain period.
Wow.
Okay, great. All right.
Wow, look at the quilting on that.
And the quilting on that, a lot of people call it Baptist fan. I like to go a little bit less denominational on that, and I'd like to call it either elbow quilting or fan quilting.
No, you just figure out who your group is and just name your That's
I
what
don't like
you
to
do.
assume that the maker was Baptist or anything like that.
If you're in the South, just say Baptist friend. If you're ever in Wisconsin, call them the Lutheran fan, and they'll just love you.
This one does not have any batting, and I got this from Julie Silber, who was a guest on your show a while back. I remember her talking about summer spreads because this one has no batting, just like one of the ones she showed. I think you asked her at the time whether people making these quilts would have called them summer spreads, and I'm not sure about that. I think they could have called them counterpanes or patchwork or bedspreads or things like that. I believe that the summer spread idea came from today's historians more than from the past.
Well, and also this debunks the myth of you have to have 3 layers to call it a quilt.
That's right. This one was made by Hannah Swinn in Bergen County, New Jersey in the 1860s, 1868. It actually is embroidered and dated. Don't miss the strawberries. They're so sweet with the little dots on there. And the rooster saying hark coming out of its beak. It's a real charmer.
I mean, these are elegant. They truly are elegant.
Exactly. So let's talk about that because these are old, elegant quilts, and that's really what we're looking at now. Tell us about that term.
Well, it's interesting because there's this myth about the origins of quilt making in America. There's a lot of people who feel as though make-do scrap quilts were the very first quilts in America, and there was sort of an element of that happening because they would repurpose old materials such as bed curtains. But most of the early examples that still exist from the colonial period forward are elegant quilts made by affluent families for well-appointed homes. So it's
such as this.
This is another interesting one in terms of botany. I've done a little bit of research on this element because everybody was calling it a strawberry, and it does have similarities to a strawberry in its sort of cone shape, but when I started looking at plants, I realized that it looked a lot more like a cardoon. And cardoons are a cross between a thistle and an artichoke. I was looking at the scale of the applique and the way it was put together. Also these thorns that are coming out of the top here are unique to this particular example. I've seen this design out there in many forms before, and sometimes it looks more like a strawberry, sometimes it looks more like a thistle.
So why do you care so much about quilts? Why don't we leave this on the table? Because it's just eye candy.
Let's just leave it. Yeah.
Quilts, for me, were a meeting place between art and antiques, and I have an interest in both of those things. But they also represent the longest unbroken tradition of women's creative expression in the United States. Women have been doing quilt making since the very beginning of the time that we were colonized and through the time that mills were being opened and we were starting to establish our own fabric and textile industry in America. So, but the reason why the early quilts were made by affluent families is the fabrics were heavily taxed, they were imported, and only the people who could really afford the fabrics could do that.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Well, if you think back to U.S. history from elementary school, middle school, high school, they talk about taxation without representation. One of the biggest taxed goods was fabric.
Wow.
Cotton fabric.
Interesting. I did not know that.
You know, Bill, thank you so much for bringing these to us today. One of the things that I love, Alex, and everybody, is when we have these historical quilt segments, my heart is warmed every time we do it.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
because it's who we are today.
It is who we are today. We wouldn't be where we are without it. So tell us about your book.
Well, this book it will be out by the time this show airs. Co-authored with Mandy Lyons. She did a phenomenal job taking inspiration from these elegant old quilts and translating them into free motion quilting designs. The quilts go from the period of 1790 to roughly 1850. This one here is from 1850, and this is not in the book, but a couple of the quilts, one of the quilts at least here is in the book. And what she was trying to do was make these continuous line drawings that didn't stop based on the elements. But in the process, she learned that there were ways of incorporating the quilting designs with the patchwork and applique so that the quilt was one whole unified piece. Sometimes the quilting would riff off of the applique or patchwork.
And that's how I learned. By antique
By
quilts.
looking and looking. I don't have to ask, but I know you guys love this, right?
Yeah.
I know. Because they're out there the whole time we're showing, they're chattering.
I know.
And I don't blame you because there's so much beauty to see and to learn from these. That's great.
Yeah.
Yay?
Yeah, well, I didn't realize when I was collecting quilts to hang on my walls that there was this big quilt community.
Well, there you go.
So it was a real surprise to me to bring them out and share them and receive as much attention and opportunities as I
Well,
have.
do you travel and take your quilts and all that? I'm putting you on the spot. We didn't talk about this.
Sometimes I do, but not often lately. I'm newly engaged.
I know.
My lovely fiance Linda is backstage here.
Love is in the
and-
air.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're getting married next year.
That's great.
Great.
Congratulations. Thank you for sharing these with us today.
Do you have a website, blog? How do you communicate with
My
people?
blog is called Wonky World. I've been a little less active this year because I've
I
been
don't know
just
why.
in love. Floating around. The blog is called Wonky World, and it's Willy Wonky Quilts at blogspot.com, and I do have a website, billvolckening.com.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
And one other thing, where do you live?
Portland, Oregon.
Okay, great.
There you go.
Great.
And we want to thank Barbara Black for sharing all those wonderful, very basic, very grassroots techniques with us today.
I just love this
Yeah.
because that was the that we thought was the beginning. No, people.
This is the
these
beginning.
Are the
Yeah,
beginning.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, have you had fun? Yes. I hope you've had fun too. Thank you for joining us, and remember, everyone, it's a new day every day. That's right.
Don't go anywhere, you don't want to miss the after set.
Barbara, I want to say that my mini group is very important to me, and community of quilters is just so important if you don't have that. And you started one. Tell us about the so-and-sos.
That was interesting how that happened. In December of 2016, one of my fairly new students who had become a real fan of my classes, she and her sister, sent me an email. They had seen the 2017 design, Halo Star Medallion with the curved flying geese that
For TQS.
that Sue Garman had designed. And so she sent me an email and said, do you think we're capable of making this quilt? Please tell me honestly. And so I thought about it for a little while, and I wrote her back and I said, yes, you are both capable of making this quilt. However, you're not going to throw it together, and it's going to take some of your best effort, but you'll learn a lot over the course of the year. Now, I'm not going to make this quilt because I've got too many other things to do, but I'll answer questions for you. So then I started thinking about it. And I thought, wouldn't it be kind of fun if there was a few of us that wanted to get together and make it. So the only time left on my calendar was Sunday afternoon. So I put a note out to my guild, which has about 250 members, to see if anybody was interested. I said, well, we'll get 5 or 6. At 15, I had to say stop already because there's not room in my house for 15. And it's a 2-hour lecture demo. I do the lecture demo. They don't bring a sewing machine. So we got together. The first Sunday that we got together was January 8th. So they had a week from the time the patterns had first been printed. And I was the only person who knew them all by name. By the end of the year, they were fast buddies. They looked forward to coming every month on that Sunday. And it wasn't too long once the Patchwork Barn was shown the next years, they said, well, you're going to do that, aren't you? I said, oh, really? I've got to get some other things done. Okay, I'll do that too. So it continues.
And it's grown.
It has grown.
You're not going to be in your house going
This year we
forward.
actually moved to a store, which I teach at because I have the key and they're not open on Sunday, so we could meet there. But next year, I think we need to find a bigger space.
I just
No,
say,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
We're just so excited, aren't we?
Yeah.
The thing that I love about it is that we love you because it's a TQS thing that's kind of happened, but then you've created this community of your own, and then because you're so intimate with our BOMs, you get questions from members all over the world saying, how do you do this, and what did you experience? Because if there's a bump along the way, you've got the experience to tell
You're
that.
the mother.
Yeah.
Mom.
One of the easiest things to do for me, since I write a blog pretty frequently, so like twice a week, I thought, well, on the first of each month, I'll do a blog for that month that answers the questions and things that have come up. So that has continued, and that's where the questions come from other people.
Great.
Okay, now let's talk about your space.
Oh, yeah. In 1999, we built our home. We spent 2 years planning it. The biggest room in the house is my quilt studio.
Well, of course.
We understand that completely. Yeah. So I carefully designed it and as to where the floor plugs were going to go. And I had to argue with both my husband and the architect about window placement because I have IKEA bookshelves that are 96 inches wide. By golly, you can't put 2 windows in the middle of that wall. That's where the bookcases are going. And then I had another space where a big long table was going to go. And I know you can't put the windows in the middle of that. I want those apart. Those IKEA bookcases have white lights across the top. So not only did I have to not have windows on that wall, I needed electrical outlets outside of that 96 inch. They didn't like that at all. But they did it. And it looked great. And when the architect came back to see my house after it was fully done and furnished, he said, you were absolutely right.
That's good.
Barbara, you are absolutely right on so many things. And I want to thank you so much for coming. And thank you for participating so fully with TQS. We're honored to have you in our wheelhouse.
I'm honored to be here. And it's really quite a thrill. And I just feel like part of the TQS family.
You are.
Well, thank you.